About time we change the question we are asking surrounding Dolphins guard James Daniels. That and more here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff, writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special thank you to all of you who have helped make the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network. Incredible honor that you have bestowed on all of us. Thank you to all of you who tune in every day and make us your first listen, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Today on the show, I got a little bit of a roster crunch potentially upcoming for the Dolphins. We're going to explore what that looks like as we get some players back from injured reserve. That's cool, right? Getting healthy at the right time of year. Now, we still got quite the hole to dig out of if it's going to be anything meaningful down the stretch for this Dolphins team. But it is a nice change of pace to be talking about getting guys back and seeing what plays out with guys getting back on the field, especially names that have a lot of finances, like an Austin Jackson, who's scheduled to come back. I'm talking about the Anthony Weaver revenge game that's coming this week against the New Orleans Saints, a little unorthodox with its nature for a revenge game, but a revenge game nonetheless. But I want to start with James Daniels, because for all of the potential players that are IR to return, the potential players that the Dolphins might be getting back, we didn't get that glowing endorsement from Mike McDaniel on James Daniels. So James Daniels signs in Miami in free agency on a 3-year, $24 million contract with a team that included a $6 million signing bonus this past March. He was coming off of a torn Achilles. He'd played 208 snaps for Pittsburgh in 2024, went through his whole rehab process. Things were going well. He gets cleared fully from the rehab schedule very early on in training camp. Kind of have an expectation that, okay, we're going to push play, right? And he starts week 1, no limitations. Goes down with a pec injury in week 1, 3 snaps into the season. And it was reported at the time by ESPN's Jeremy Fowler that a source indicated that there was no tear in the pec for James Daniels, and it was expected to be a 3 to 4 week injury. Dolphins end up putting him on injured reserve, and we've now gone well past 3 to 4 weeks. We're now teetering on the brink of 3 months for James Daniels. And they would tell you, I'm sure, that everybody's body responds differently to different kinds of stimulus and different kinds of rehab, and he's on his own calendar, and his body, whether it's responding in the way that they thought it would or not, or whatever, or maybe the prognosis changed, or maybe there's a setback, whatever. I don't know any of those details. But what I do know, it was originally prescribed as a pec strain, 3 to 4 weeks per ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, and it's now been just about 3 months. And Mike McDaniel, when asked on yesterday, about James Daniels, did not give the glowing update we were hoping for. If you're watching on YouTube, on my right-hand third here, it says Mike McDaniel's glowing update. Spoiler alert, that's sarcasm. Here's what Mike McDaniel answered to the question of, there was hope that James Daniels would return this year. Just to clarify that further, is that now in question? Did he have a setback of some kind? The answer is, I don't want to arbitrarily say he is or isn't, but I don't really know if he will return or not. So that's kind of where I'm at. Great. Awesome. Lovely update. And I don't that's no shade at Mike or anything, right? It's just this has become that situation that the Dolphins seem to have one of every single year. Kind of this weird saga of a player. And let's say James Daniels doesn't return. Okay, just hypothetically. Let's say he doesn't come back this year. 208 snaps in Pittsburgh last year. 3 snaps this year. He got over $8 million this year from the Dolphins. You're talking about $3 million per snap ROI for Miami with this contract. And James Daniels is 28 years old. If you play 211 snaps of offense and you're scheduled to make about $8 million in each of the next 2 seasons, the question has to change. With this kind of feedback and this situation, and we're now 6 weeks out, and he's got injury guarantees for 2026. But if he can pass a physical, when you move on from him, if it's within the first 3 days of the league calendar year next March, you can void all the guarantees on his contract, and you can move on and not owe him any more money. That's the question that I think we're at now. It's not, is James Daniels going to be back in time for the Jets? Is James Daniels going to be back in time for the Bucs? Is James Daniels going to be back in time for the Patriots? I don't really care at this point. If this is where we're at, then my response is, what do we need to do to just, you can't go into 2026 in a salary shed in the midst of a new GM that's coming in and running your football operation and say, we're going to pay James Daniels $8 million. He's played 211 snaps the last 2 seasons combined. You can't justify it. And if you can get out of all the guarantees, then I think that's the approach that you have to take, in my opinion. What's the fallout from that? You could pre-June 1st James Daniels in the first 3 days of the league calendar year before his portion of his salary fully guarantees, assuming he could pass a physical, and you would take $4.8 million in dead cap. You could designate him as a post-June 1st, and you wouldn't lose any cap space. You wouldn't save any cap space. You'd then take a $1.2 million dead cap hit in 2026, and then a $3.6 million dead cap. So 1.2 plus 3.6 is still 4.8. So you have $4.8 million in dead cap that you have to negotiate. And that's the prorated amounts of the $6 million signing bonus that he got, 4/5 of that. So you could either split it 4.8 in 2026, or you can go 1.2 in 2026 and then 3, or 1.2 in 2026 and then 3.6 in 2027. I wouldn't even bother with the post-June 1st designation. I think there's some other names and some other contracts that if you're going to offload salary and continue to transition from players, you might want those post-June 1st cuts for bigger lumps of cap commitments, in my opinion. But that's where I've unfortunately reached with the James Daniels contract is and his situation is if we don't know as of Thanksgiving if a guy who suffered a pec strain is going to be back, and maybe there was a setback. And if there's a setback, that's super unfortunate, and that's not really anything anybody can control, and I understand that. But that underscores like a guy who you signed coming off of a major injury, but who did not really have durability issues before this year. If now we're missing 12, 13 games and then 16 plus games, really the entire season, that's the kind of risk that we are trying to shed ourselves of as a team to get the salary cap on the roster in a more sustainable and healthy place. So I don't think it matters whether Mike McDaniel's back, whether Mike McDaniel's gone, who you hire as the GM, if it's Champ Kelly or something like it. For me, it doesn't really matter. It's one of those for me that I can take $8 million and sign somebody else to be a sufficient level starting guard who's not 28 and has played more than 200 snaps the last 2 seasons combined. And that's where I'm at with James, with what we know on the outside looking in, and then a non-encouraging update from Mike McDaniel. We are going to talk about Anthony Weaver revenge game next here, Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on all of the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or if you want to ride a hot hand throughout, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets in a same-game parlay for a shot at even bigger payouts. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one making that late game push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up today to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Anthony Weaver interviewed for the New Orleans Saints head coaching vacancy last winter. He didn't get it. It went to Kellen Moore, right? And Anthony Weaver's defense had a really rough first month, if you will, of the season defensively with a lot of new pieces. He was asked about the Jalen Phillips trade and any feedback that he gave in that by, I think it was Barry Jackson asked him that. And he's like, look, that's all above my pay grade. I'm in the business of finding solutions and solving problems. They tell me there's a possibility that these things happen. And effectively paraphrasing, he says, I got to make the best of it and put together the best product that we can. But seeing his defense rebound the way that it has, and now setting the stage going into a matchup against the Saints, who chose to go in a different direction, right? They had formally interviewed 5 coaches, and it included Anthony Weaver, Kellen Moore, who got the job, Joe Brady with the Bills, Mike Kafka, who's now the interim head coach for the New York Giants, and their own interim head coach, Darren Rizzi. The Saints, with their current state of affairs, are a team that ranks 31st in the NFL in scoring offense, 26th in yards offensively. They rank 28th in total turnovers. They have 17 giveaways. They rank 30th in yards per attempt running the football. They rank dead last in the NFL in rushing touchdowns with 32. They're 29th in passing touchdowns with 29. They're 27th in net yards per attempt at 5.4. They are 30th in points per possession offensively, 1.36 points per possession offensively. They're the 5th highest turnover percentage on percentage of drives that end in turnovers, 14%. They're 29th in percentage of drives that end in scores, which is under 28% of their drives end in scores. They're dead last in red zone offense. They're dead last in fourth down offense. They're 20th in third down percentage. Like, you can really go down the list. And I believe I said this stat already. I think I said it on the squad show on yesterday, with Grease and Scanina. They have 3 offensive touchdowns in the last calendar month, offensively. Like, it has not been a very fun time. And one of those was a 62-yard touchdown pass, like explosive play, right? This has a chance for Anthony Weaver to be a flex game of y'all chose to go in a different direction. Let me show you why I think you guys were wrong. And I think that'd be a really fun experience for Anthony Weaver, who was somebody who was very maligned by Dolphins fans in the first month of the season. There were some people that weren't fans in the offseason. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Weaver. I recognize what he was asked really was it's inconsequential whether or not he's been done any favors with the personnel. But a lot of these young players are trending up and to the right. They are going the right direction. They are getting better. They are gelling collectively as a unit. The performance overall, and it's not stable week to week, right? Like, the Dolphins gave up too many rushing yards to the Commanders, and I think Chop Robinson probably got a little bit too far upfield on that big Marcus Mariota run. That was 40-something yards. But they've started to turn they had no turnovers in the first 3 weeks. They now rank middle of the pack in takeaways defensively. They are very good in the red zone. They've only given up 20 touchdowns in 40 trips to the red zone. That's a top 5 scoring percentage as far as touchdowns conceded defensively. Now, they're not particularly strong on third and fourth downs defensively. They're 26th and 29th respectively, but they were horrible the first month of the season. Like, they could not stop anybody. Did they force up? How many punts did they force in the first 3 weeks? Right. So it has started to stem the tide a little bit, where the passing yards allowed. I mean, you go through the last 8 games, 207 passing yards allowed, 289 to the Bills, but a lot of that was garbage time stuff in the fourth quarter with the Dolphins up multiple scores. 188 to Baltimore, 168 to Atlanta, 102 to Cleveland, 263 to the Chargers. The vast majority of that, I would say probably 20% of that came on a busted coverage where Minka didn't run with the underneath route, and then Dante Trader misses the tackle. 179 and 207. They've given up less than 105 yards in 3 of their last 5 games rushing as well. Scoring defense, they gave up 31 to the Browns, but like the offense gave up 7, and then they put you in another possession inside the 5-yard line, and there was an explosive run in there. Like the field position battle was brutal to you in that game. From an EPA perspective, the defense actually played one of their 5 best performances of the season, but they gave up 31 points because the offense had 219 yards, 12 first downs, 4 turnovers, including a pick 6. 10 points to Atlanta, 28 to Baltimore. Kind of same deal. Offense had 3 turnovers, including one on a short field, with you having the lead and a chance to move the football after you move the football successfully early in the game. Last 2 teams, the Bills and Commanders, you've held to 13 points. 5 turnovers the last 2 weeks. And look, you can look at Pittsburgh, the Jets, the Saints. We'll see with the Bengals, right? The Bucks are really banged up right now. Their wide receiver core has not been good. Their running game's not been impactful. You look at the next 5 games, and I think defensively you can use the bye week and the performance of the last couple games beforehand, and you come out strong against the Saints team that's really struggling with that extra incentive. Not that Anthony Weaver would ever say it, and it's up to his players to go out and do it anyway. But I think this can be a springboard for a very strong stretch of performances for the Dolphins defense, assuming the offense doesn't set you up on short fields like they did against Cleveland, because that's how you give up 31 points. So that's Anthony Weaver, and he was asked about Chris Olave, and he talked about, I'm very familiar with him with the film work that I did for the interview last year, talking about for the position. So I hope his players are cognizant of the Saints passed Anthony Weaver up. So let's come out, let's play fired up. Let's remind New Orleans why they did not make the right decision. I'd be pretty gassed up about that. And they should have a great opportunity to do so against this Saints offensive depth chart. I want to talk about the roster crunch for IR returns. We're going to get to that next here, Locked on Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
So the Dolphins have 2 players in IR return activation windows. It's Austin Jackson and Darren Waller. And I'll be interested to see what kind of run Waller gets. I think you could see some really fun personnel developments if you're able to get into a position where you could have Waller and Dulcich and Julian Hill and Daniel Brunskill all taking like 13 personnel, heavy stuff, and then you mix in Alec Ingold to go 22 jumbo. And that can be a very fun combination of ways to stress if it's Waddle and Waller with 2 other tight ends, one of them potentially being a bonus tackle on the field. I think that that is what I'm hopeful to see as much of as possible down the stretch, in order to kind of evaluate if Mike McDaniel stays, what does this look like? What can they take from this year? Who can be pieces moving forward? And I don't think Waller's a part of the calculus, but hopefully it gets you to start taking serious the tight end position as a whole, right? You consider since Mike McDaniel got here, it's been Darren Waller via trade, Jonnu Smith as an early cut. That ended up being a home run hit for him. What's Jonnu doing right now, by the way? Let me pull up the old Pro Football Reference page on Jonnu Smith, get the update on the $12 million extension for Jonnu Smith. Oh, okay. 29 catches for 184 yards and 2 scores, averaging 6.3 yards per catch. Great. Awesome. Love that. Good for you. 32 touches for 201 yards and 2 scores. Okay. I digress. It's been scrap heap guys out of retirement, UDFAs. Julian Hill was a UDFA. Tanner Connor was a UDFA. Hayden Rucci was a UDFA. Durham Smythe was a guy who I think was well established when Mike got here. Right, your marquee investment was Mike Gesicki, and we kind of got burned by it because all of his best routes were also the routes in which the offense was crushing people with Waddle and Tyreek Hill running the deep stuff over the middle. And it feels like that there's been some scars that's been carried with that, and the team is only now starting to awaken themselves to, okay, like maybe there's still value in prioritizing this position. And if the Dolphins put themselves in a position, they're drafting in the teens, you're going to have a hard time convincing me, depending on who's on the board, that the Oregon kid this year, Kenyon Sadiq, is not the best player available. And he just so happens to be an absolute freak of nature tight end who will it crushes. Like he could be what they want Julian Hill to be as an in-space blocker, while also being a Jonnu Smith type receiver in the same physical profile. Yeah, that's exciting. Gets me juiced up a little bit thinking about it. But that's not the point of today's conversation. The point is the Dolphins are going to need to, at some point, if they activate both of these guys in time for Sunday's game against the Saints, they need to open 2 roster spots on the 53. I look at some of the bubble guys. I think they probably need the bodies at corner. Because their corners on the roster are, they just added AJ Green off the practice squad from the Rams, but it's Jack Jones, Rasul Douglas, Jason Marshall, Ethan Bonner. That's it for corners if you're not including AJ Green. So I think Green's probably got to stay on the roster just off the numbers crunch. I think some of the versatility of the safeties can maybe help you in that regard. But I look at the edge group where it's Chubb, Judon, Chop Robinson, Cam Good, and then the versatility of some of your guys that you have that play end, plus Willie Gay at linebacker, who can also do some edge stuff. Andre Carter, who they signed to the 53 a couple weeks ago out of Army. I think he's a candidate to potentially get moved, try to stash him back on the practice squad, and you can open up a spot for potentially Waller. I don't know that I would risk Rucci, but I would understand why if it was Julian Hill, Greg Dulcich, let's put Darren Waller back on and move Rucci back to the practice squad. But now he's got a little bit of tape out there. He's done some nice things. Like that's a player I would be a little worried about guaranteeing that you'd get him back on the practice squad. And if you did get him back on the practice squad, that somebody, if they had an injury at tight end, didn't come knocking and try to sign him to their 53. I'd prefer to have that protection for a player that I could kind of see a future with. Keon Smith, I don't think I would play the game with Kendall Lamb just because I think Keon Smith gives you more flexibility. Kendall Lamb is the kind of a fringe of retirement, but I'd like to try to do right by Kendall Lamb and not get him to the doorstep of potentially retiring and waive him in Thanksgiving, right? Like I'd like to try to do, and I'd rather have Kendall Lamb on the roster than Keon Smith at this stage anyway. So I think Keon Smith is a candidate for opening for Austin Jackson. I would give some consideration to like Taj Washington, D. Eskridge. I think Rucci is a decent candidate, but for me, like if I were opening 2 spots for Austin Jackson and Darren Waller, I would probably be moving Andre Carter to the practice, or trying to move Andre Carter to the practice squad, and probably try to move D. Eskridge down as well. Right. Miami being as heavy as they are, it's a little bit like, I don't think you need to roster 6 wide receivers on the 53. Cedric Wilson, I want, because I think Cedric Wilson can maybe end up surpassing Westbrook-Ikine for the blocking like X role. Malik Washington obviously has great value to you as a special teams player and a role player in the passing game. Jalen Waddle is obviously a marquee player. Westbrook-Ikine is on a 2-year deal. I'd like to think maybe he gets a little bit more time on task and he can come back around. So for me, it's Taj Washington, who's on a rookie contract, or D. Eskridge is a guy who, is he going to have a big-time market? There's always wide receivers available. So I think I'd play that numbers game if I had to. But I think you could also justify Keon Smith, who was back on a restricted free agent tender this year, and Andre Carter would be the two that I would move to get those 2 roster spots locked in. So we'll see what the Dolphins do. And maybe they only need one because maybe only Austin Jackson comes back this week. But we got the holiday coming up. I got crossover Thursday with Ross Jackson. We got another squad show tomorrow to get into. So there's lots of great content coming you guys' way before we get to the Saints game on Sunday. Keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. And I will talk to you all again soon. Go Fins.